Hello, welcome to Stretford Paddock. We're here for the news this morning, and the main story this morning is that Mousa Dembele is basically he's after a move to United. There's been reports in the Daily Star and in Sky Sports that United are interested in Mousa Dembele of Lyon, and that Dembele wants the move to United. We're looking at a potential fee of £83 million, which this is according to Lyon, saying they want €100 million for him. I think rather than, you would assume United might be able to haggle down on that price slightly, especially after the business they did for Bruno Fernandes in January. But this, like I said, this story then, we'll just get straight into it, is coming from the Daily Star, who themselves are reporting Sky Sports. And this says, Manchester United will sign a forward at the end of the season, and Mousa Dembele is keen to make the move. That's according to Sky Sports correspondent Kaveh Solikol, who states Lyon will allow the forward to leave in the summer for a mammoth fee of 83 million quidders, which is a hell of a lot of money. Club president Jean-Michel Aulas drives a hard bargain for most of his prized assets, and Lyon aren't willing to sell Dembele on the cheap amid interest from United and Chelsea. But this is the key point here. It says, but despite two sides chasing his signature, the player reportedly wants a move to Old Trafford. So that's the key thing. The same thing we've seen with Ighalo, the same thing we've seen with Bruno Fernandes, the same thing we've seen with Harry Maguire. One key point in United's targets this season, or under Solskjaer generally, seems to be players that actually want to play for United. I know people like to make out that no one ever wants to play for United anymore, that this fallen giant and everyone hates us and that we're terrible and, you know, why would you want to come play for United? But it does seem as though there are still players around Europe, a lot of players around Europe, that would absolutely love to play for United. Again, carrying on, this says, Manchester United will sign a striker in the summer, and Lyon's Mousa Dembele wants to move to Old Trafford. Again, that is according to Kaveh from Sky Sports News. Dembele will be allowed to leave Lyon at the end of the season, and he wants to return to England, where he started his career at Fulham. He wasn't great at Fulham, but he was just a young lad when he signed for Fulham, and that was in a Fulham side that wasn't particularly good in itself. Dembele has scored 13 times this season, and injuries to key players meant that Lyon were unwilling to let him leave in January. So there were teams sniffing around in January. They also wanted to keep him because they're still in the Champions League and face Juventus next Wednesday. Again, this is Kaveh from Sky Sports going on to say that Lyon president Jean-Michel Aulas will let Dembele leave in the summer, but he will have to settle for a fee less than his €100 million asking price. So this £83 million that we're seeing there is the supposed asking price of Lyon for Dembele. And I think it's relatively clear that even in today's market, a player with the career and, you know, the stats and the numbers of Dembele probably isn't going to be fetching £83 million. But again, that is Lyon's asking price, and I suppose we're going to have to drive him down from there if we do want to sign Dembele. Apparently Chelsea tried to sign him last month and were willing to pay up to £40 million for him, and he's also been watched by City, Newcastle and West Ham. Tottenham also tried to sign him when he was at Celtic, but they are also looking for a striker in the summer. There's a lot of teams, especially in the Premier League and around Europe generally at the moment, who are lacking in top strikers. Tottenham obviously have got injury problems to Harry Kane and Heung-min Son at the moment. Chelsea, as we've seen there, have got Tammy Abraham as their main striker, who has done all right but has slowed down significantly as the season's gone on. And then they've just got backup players in Giroud and Batshuayi, who are old and not very good, respectively. And then, as we've seen there as well, Newcastle and West Ham are also struggling with to get goals. But obviously United are after a striker. We tried to sign Haaland in January. That didn't work out for a multitude of reasons, and it seems as though Dembele may be the next player on United's list. Let me know in the comments what you think to Dembele as a player, what you think to that kind of asking fee, asking price for Dembele. Like we said before, he's got 13 goals in the league this season. Last season, he got it was 23 goals and 4 assists in all competitions. So just to try and get a sort of a scale for, you know, how good he is, how prolific he is. 2017-18, he got 16 goals and 5 assists. So he's not, and that was for Celtic. So it's not as though he's, you know, a 25, 30 goal a season man, which is seemingly the sort of profile of player we're looking for. Because we've got a 15 goal-a-season man in Martial, and who looks as though he may be stepping up to becoming that 20-goal-a-season man. We've got a 15-goal-a-season man in Rashford, who looks as though he is stepping up to being that 25-goal-a-season man. So do we need another player who, you know, only gets 15 to 20 goals? Again, let me know in the comments. Someone said 35 million plus Pogba. I think, you know, we might get a bit more for him than that. 83 million is daylight robbery. I can't see us getting big money for Pogba. How much do you want for him? Yeah, I think we will get big money for Pogba, but I don't think that money will be spent directly on Mousa Dembele. East of Stretford saying, nah, not even close to worth it. Need some big boy funds, and I think we should focus more on right wingers at the moment. Can't afford Sancho if we pay for Dembele. Well, if we pay 83 million for Dembele, then Sancho looks a more sort of difficult prospect for sure. Peter Jackson says from the Daily Star. It is from the Daily Star, but they're reporting these quotes, like I said, from Sky Sports, who, whilst, you know, they're not as reliable as maybe they once were, they're certainly more reliable than the Daily Star. So these are Sky Sports news quotes. So maybe there is a little bit more truth to them. We need more players with Bruno's attitude. Well, like we said, this idea that Mousa Dembele is desperate to play for United, that kind of insinuates and infers a certain attitude from him, at least a willingness to play and to learn and to work hard at United, you would hope. Like I said, if he's keen to join United, then hopefully that means he will have a good attitude when he gets here. You could only hope. 60 million and Ramsey, what are they smoking? No chance. Pogba to Juve, 60 million plus Ramsey. I think that's a bit of a slap in the face, considering they just got Ramsey for free, and Pogba's worth probably more like double that. Yeah, Morning Josephs, can't see United spending a lot of money on another centre forward when Martial is still at the club. Well, we were interested in Haaland. I know he wouldn't have cost a lot of money, but that was just mostly because of his release clause. I think United are clearly interested in a striker, a number 9, to either replace or supplement Anthony Martial. And I think if we had have signed Haaland, that would have been with a view to play him 35, 40 times a season. He wouldn't have come in as a substitute. So the fact that we were in for him at all says to me that we are looking for a number 9 to lead the line for United on a permanent basis. Raul Jimenez would be a much better signing. Haaland is a freak. Yeah, it does seem as though he is, doesn't it? I would like us to sign a backup striker and a first-choice right winger. 83 million is too much for me. 83 million is a lot for a player that's played at Fulham, Celtic and Lyon and never scored 30 goals for any of them. It does seem like a lot of money, but again, that is just the fee that is being quoted by Lyon's president. So you would assume if it did come down to negotiations and genuine transfer talks, that we would be able to get a hefty knockoff on that price. Don't write for Garlo just yet. I'm not right. I think United want a full-time striker that isn't 30. Even if Garlo scores, 8 or 9 goals before the end of the season, and we keep him on a permanent basis, I think he would be that backup striker that you're talking about. But I think Solskjaer also wants a sort of a big name or someone who's going to come in a bit younger, who's going to score, like I said, 25, 30 goals a season. Maybe instead of Martial, or maybe alongside Martial. But I think if we do keep Ighalo, which of course is absolutely no certainty at all, then that would be as the backup player. Grab Vardy, real Fergie signing. How old is Vardy now? He's in his 30s, isn't he? 32. So I think, again, that would be another short-term solution that I don't think Solskjaer's looking for. You've seen the average age of his transfers since he came in has been 24. He's not looking for short-term solutions, is he? He's building for the future. I also think Greenwood is a couple of years away from competing for the centre-forward position. That's a good point. We've seen him sort of, pushed out to the right-hand side mostly this season when he's played, partly due to a lack of physicality that Solskjaer mentioned yesterday. He said he's not Wayne Rooney, he doesn't have that body type yet, so in a couple of years he thinks he'll really become a complete centre-forward. And also because of a lack of options that we have on the right wing. So I think if we did bring a right winger in, or maybe even 2 players on that side, we would see Greenwood's chances being sort of pushed maybe slightly more centrally, which, like you said, could be a good backup for now, and then maybe taking that mantle off Martial in a couple of years. Right, let's move on to our second story for today then. This is This is a bit more of a concrete one. This is a bit quite a damning sort of set of quotes from Solskjaer relating to Andreas Pereira and Jesse Lingard, who many people, including myself, have criticised this season especially. I know Lingard's had a lot of critics for a long time, but I think he has had periods at the club where he's been anywhere between, decent and excellent. But obviously in the last 18 months, that's not really what we've seen from him. He was questioned yesterday before the game. Of course, both players not even included in the matchday squad at all. So they've gone from starting games a couple of weeks ago to not even being in the squad when now McTominay's come back into the picture. Solskjaer was asked why Pereira and Lingard have been left out, and he said, "We picked a squad of 18 that we thought was right, that we thought was the right 18. We've got cover on the bench, wide men, forwards, midfielders, and defenders. So that was the decision I made," which in itself kind of sounds, like he's basically saying, well, they're not good enough. But you kind of think, well, fair enough, players get dropped, Greenwood's been in and out of the squad and all that, you don't necessarily think too much of it. Then after the game, he was questioned again, and that's when Solskjaer said, "There's more and more competition for places, your standard has to improve." Basically saying to them, if you don't get better, you're not playing for us again. I think this is the first time we've seen since he's come in, genuinely people being bought and replaced in their position. We kind of saw it with Ashley Young, but he still played a lot of games even after Wan-Bissaka had been bought. The same goes for the centre-back position, where Phil Jones was kind of marginalised last season as well, and then we let Smalling leave. But this is the first time where we've got Bruno Fernandes in there, and now Pereira and Lingard aren't even in the squad, and Solskjaer suggesting there that if they don't get better, they won't be back in the squad. So there's been a lot of talk in social media in the last few months when we've seen the likes of Lingard and Pereira especially playing, saying that, why is he playing them? They're not good enough, they're crap. You should be playing Gomez, you should be playing these players instead of him. What does he like about Lingard and Pereira? They never do anything. Well, now you know that he doesn't like them. That he doesn't think they're good enough. So any reason that he was playing them is because of a lack of other options, not because he thinks they're so good. And that's very evident, like I said, from that quote where he says there's more and more competition for places, your standard has to improve. He's basically coming out and saying, if you don't get better, you're not playing again. So I think there'll be a lot of people who are sort of not happy to hear that, because you'd never want to, personally anyway, I don't want to see players saying, you're crap, you're not going to play this club anymore. But the suggestion that he knows, that Solskjaer knows that, there are certain players in the squad that aren't good enough, and he wasn't just playing them because he thinks they're really good and he's delusional, or he can't see it, or he's a bad manager because, as if you can't tell Lingard's been bad. He clearly knows he's been bad. He's been backed into a corner with injuries and personnel that's meant that we've had to play Lingard and Pereira so regularly this season, and clearly now you can see that, he doesn't necessarily like the way they've been playing. Matthias saying, I say get rid of both. We have Bruno and Mata can still play sometimes, probably a couple of years still. Pogba can play the 10. Maybe Gomez stays. We have enough coverage there. I don't think it's... All of the players you've listed there, Mata, Gomez and Pogba, are all sort of number 10, maybe number 8s. The thing with Pereira, which, in fairness to him, he can play that deeper role. He can play number 8. He can play number 10. Not particularly well in any of them. But if these are sort of squad rotation players going forward, you wouldn't mind necessarily seeing Lingard play, let's say, a fifth round of the FA Cup against Northampton. Not that that's the only game we should play, but I think the squad is thin enough, or so thin already, that I wouldn't necessarily just sell them just because they're not good enough. I think most teams have backup players that you wouldn't play every game, but do get a few games a season to manage the load of the likes of McTominay and even Matic, who, there's one that at the start of the season no one thought would even be here at the start of the season, let alone being one of our better midfielders, who's one of the key drivers in us keeping 7 clean sheets in our last 9 games. And I think sometimes his passing and his speed, he gets taken, the game goes past him sometimes, but he's our most accomplished defensive midfielder by far, and I think it's no coincidence that, like I said, his re-inclusion in the side has coincided with our best defensive form of the season so far. So it's not always wise to completely rule people out. We've seen Lingard play the thing with Pereira is we've never really seen him be at a level where you think he's good enough for Man United. He's been on loan a lot. He's come in. He's looked okay at times, but generally he's been pretty poor. Lingard, like I said, despite the last 18 months being very poor from him, we have seen spells in his career where he's got goals, he's got assists. He has shown us a level that he's capable of where he can be a useful piece in a bigger jigsaw for United. So I wouldn't necessarily just throw the baby out with the bathwater there. Again, people like to have a go that you like players who have been through the academy, but he's a Manchester lad, he's been through the academy, he knows the club, and he seems to be, despite, a bit of a negative public image, seems to be very, very popular in the dressing room. So I think Lingard is maybe one to keep hold of just, like I said, as a squad player going forward. The thing is, I was so hyped for Pereira, but he's got worse since youth level, had to be okay in the Championship. I think he would be good in the Championship. I think also he's probably playing without much confidence. He's, the thing he said about the goals and the catch-up and all that, he just kind of, I feel a little bit sorry for him. He clearly knows he's struggling. And these comments from Solskjaer probably won't help that, but not that you can pander to players and just play people who aren't good enough for United because they admit that they're struggling or because they feel upset. I know it's kind of a cutthroat business, but that's what football is. But I do feel a little bit sorry for him. Matthias again saying, I just can't see Pereira's qualities. What is he particularly good at? Sure, we need depth, but at some point it gets pointless just keeping players just for squad depth's sake. I agree, which is why I would defend Lingard's position in the squad more vehemently than I would Pereira's. I think, Lingard has been in and around that squad for 10 years now, obviously with a few loans here and there, whereas Pereira is a bit younger, but like you said, we've never really seen what he's particularly good at. He's a decent dribbler. He's not, he's a decent passer of the ball, but his positioning and his thought processes and decision making has been consistently poor since he's come in. Lingard signed with Raiola. This is a massive, let's say, FU to the club. He has to go. That is a strange one. That's the one thing that makes me think Lingard might leave. Signing with Raiola, who is essentially an enemy of the state at United, isn't he? He's like, I don't know, it's a bit sort of Trump, Putin, that whole relationship where you just think, why is this relationship happening? I'm not sure. Lingard always seemed like a sort of player who would stay at United for as long as we'd have him. Like you imagine with a lot of the youth players, you think, well, they're just United fans, so they'll stay here. And then obviously signing with Raiola, who is the transfer specialist, who is, widely known to be not a fan of Solskjaer. That is a bit of a strange one to me. Found a few comments then. Hasn't Pereira been involved in more posting turnovers that led to goals for us? I don't quite know what you mean. I assume you mean winning the ball back that led to goals. Maybe he has, but I think his actual on the ball quality, like I said, his energy and his industriousness is very good. So sometimes he does win the ball back, and that can lead to goals. But he's a poor finisher. His passing range is decent, but is misused because of his decision making. He takes too many shots. We know the problems with Pereira. We don't need to go into that. Dembele isn't even worth 40 million. Fair enough. Lingard and Raiola deserve each other. One can only score in the Europa League. The other can't get offers for his players over 50 million. Well, I don't think Raiola's struggling for money and offers for his players, but I get your point. Klopp said he'll never deal with Raiola. Wenger hated Raiola. He's a snake. Yeah, and Ferguson, of course, hated Raiola as well. Right, that's going to be all for today. We're going to be back in a little bit for Howson's Brew at 4 o'clock, as always, on a Monday. And we're going to be giving out a mug as well for the best comment on our podcast. So if you go into our podcast, Stretford Paddock Podcast, on iTunes, and leave us a 5-star review and leave a little comment in there as well. If it's funny or interesting, or maybe leave a little fact or a joke or something, if you leave us a nice review on there, we're going to pick out the best one of the week, and we'll be giving out, is that it? One of these mugs. So you can be the proud owner of a Stretford Paddock mug. So, like I said, leave a review on iTunes, and we'll be back at 4 o'clock for the brew. We'll see you in a bit.